Welcome to Games from Folktales, a podcast that mixes tabletop game scenarios and historical trivia. I'm your host, Timothy Ferguson. This week, dressing like a murder hobo. What you wear really isn't a matter of choice in most of historical Europe. Clothing isn't so much fashion as telling people how you deserve to be treated. Many games don't deal with this at all. People wear whatever mechanically gives their character the biggest bonuses. Their clothes don't look like a rich medieval person's because they send no message. In some computer games, to encourage people not to look like their clothes have been shaken onto them by a thrift shop zombie, there are set bonuses. If you dress like a warrior priest of the goddess of darkness and night, you sneak better, but only if your gloves match your shoes, because she cares about your accessories more than what's in your heart. In much of historical Europe, sumptuary laws existed. These made it illegal for the wrong sort of people to wear various things: fur fringes, weapons, silk garments, certain colours. All of these are not to be worn by those with plebeian blood. If your character is a poor farm boy off for adventure, that includes him. Wear the wrong coloured shirt and you are literally telling a cast of armed men they should bow down to you when you walk past. This can get you fined, beaten, or imprisoned in certain countries. In Venice, middle-class women loved game lawyering the sumptuary laws. Fringes were banned, but if it was detachable, it wasn't a fringe now, was it? A particular colour might be banned, but if you added a little bit of black, then clearly it was an entirely different colour, and so it was fine. Eventually, the authorities gave up, and rich people took to wearing the stuff that only rich people could afford. Venice got really colourful, and to more staid communities, terrifyingly debauched really quickly. Sumptuary laws had various rationales. One was that the rich dyes and fabrics came from the East, so the money for them was being given to the other side in the Crusades. Buying cool stuff from Araby funded mercenaries for the Islamic nobility. How true this was is debatable, but it was the reason given at various times. Another was that the poor lacked the moral fibre to have cool kit. It would lead to pride and covetousness, the sorts of things that rich people, with dedicated spiritual advisors, would steer clear of. The final reason, though, is the one most popular in cities like Venice. In the medieval world, no sensible person believes that everyone is equal. The point of clothes is to tell people where you stand in the social hierarchy, so there's no need for violence to force people below you to act in suitably deferential ways. Given the tendency of people in the Italian city-states to start intergenerational games of how do you like my knife, politeness was very important. When we look at many of the things medieval people wore, they seem a bit silly. Their conspicuous consumption seems odd, even when we accept that their understanding of economics was poor, and they really did think that rich people saving money caused recessions. Their belief that rich people should live not at the edge of their income, but at the edge of their credit, appears bizarre. The point, though, is this: your status in medieval Europe is continually being checked through a series of signals. Your expenditure fuels these signals. Do you regularly throw the parties required of a senior courtier? Well then, you obviously have powerful friends. Have you sold off your family silver? Then you can't afford mercenaries or dowries. Status is performed, but not everyone is permitted to perform. Fashion's part of this. It forces consumption, and so it separates the vastly rich from the merely wealthy. Fashion can also be political. Far later, the Cavaliers and Roundheads, for example, made political and religious allegiances obvious through cleaving to or cleaving from luxurious fashions. This isn't quite so popular early on. Player characters rarely seem to be signalling through their clothes. De Tocqueville, when he toured America, noted how crushing the false equity of American manners was. You were meant to simultaneously treat everyone as your equal, and yet know who was actually in charge, and not slight them by actually treating them as your equal. De Botton mentions something oppressive in this idea. It's codified in the Ars Magica rules. Your character can theoretically do everything that everyone else can do. If you have the same potential as everyone else, but don't become terribly rich and powerful, it's because you are a weak character. Medieval Europeans don't believe this. Mortal life is fundamentally unfair, and God tallies things up to create justice after you die. Even the Protestant ideal that good people will be favoured materially while in this world for their hard work does not yet have any followers in 1220. You need to signal your role because the world and society don't care about you much. In Ars Magica there's very little social signalling, but what there is kept mostly within the Society of Wizards. If your magus turns up at a tribunal and there are a bunch of guys wearing red and orange, they are the people likely to start setting things on fire. If there's another group in grey-black, that's House Tremare, and they wear a uniform because they're essentially a political party. The House of Messengers wears red caps to say that they have the rights of magicians even though they lack magical powers. The magical police force, the hoplites, wear sashes. Average humans have no idea what any of these signals really mean, with the exception of knowing that if you hurt red caps, terrible things will happen. In the opposite direction, there were marks to exclude. The obvious one is that Jews were forced to wear various clothes markers in various places. This was theoretically to protect them, and to protect nearby Gentiles. The right to farm the Jews, which is to say soak them for cash, was owned by various powerful lords, and if you beat up a Jew, you were preventing his farmer, and that's literally what they were called in English, from collecting as much cash, and you could expect a lawsuit. Criminals also had marks to prevent them from being mistaken for citizens. Prostitutes in much of Italy had to wear red caps, shoes, and hats. In Ars Magica, where the messengers of the magicians wear red caps and have their home base in Italy, this has surely led to someone needing a punch in the face. One house tells humans that wizards wear blue robes with stars on them, conical hats, and carry staves. They also say that these wizards need to speak and move their hands to cast magic. This is the house that likes sneaking around civilization most. By making sure that people know that wizards look a certain way, and can be depowered with simple precautions, they make their own lives easier because they do not wear blue robes most of the time. They use spindles or wands instead of staves, and many of them can cast magic with bound hands, or silently. The only strong clothing signal sent to mortals about magicians in Ars Magica is deliberately false, and it's to set up a contact protocol which aids the magicians.